So welcome, our brilliance colleague, Alistair. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Alistair, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Thank you, Victor. And look, I appreciate your words of gratitude. I think it's one of the key qualities which is important for all of us, to be grateful for where we are, where we sit, what we have. And a close colleague of mine once taught me gratitude is probably the most important virtue we can have. So beautiful opening words. Thank you, Victor. So very pleased to introduce myself, Alistair Maclay. I work for the GSG, the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment. I think ever since I started as an investor, which was over 20 years ago now, I've always been committed to investing with purpose and positivity in mind, not just moving money to make money. So way back 2003, I used to work for CDC, the British BFI, now known as British International Investment. And then we created a private equity firm called Actis out of that, which focused on emerging markets investing. So I'm a very interested in, committed to how investment can do good. And we call that impact investment, of course, now. And Victor, you and your colleagues know it very, very well in the community of practice, but not everybody in the world knows what impact investment is, but it's a tool, a method to harness private capital of public good. And that is something I am avowedly committed to right now in my work and in my personal life.
That's incredible. And once again, like your body of work speaks for itself. Absolutely incredible. And the fact that you commit yourself to social purpose and social impact since the day we've met. So once again, I just appreciate your leadership and all that you do for so many. My next question is, what's inspiring you right now? You've been doing this for such a long time. What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
There's always a lot that keeps us up at night, but let's start more positively maybe. I mean, what's inspiring? Small, medium enterprises, SMEs. Those people are rock stars. Think about those entrepreneurs who are working in all different countries and who underpin the economy of their country. Whether you're talking about Italy, where 80+% of the economy is in small, medium enterprises, or Zambia, or Nigeria, where it's 95%. It's a huge, huge piece of our future and our economy. So those entrepreneurs, they wake us up, motivate us every day. Because you can measure what they do in so many different ways, and measurement is important for impact. But fundamentally, they're creating jobs. And if there's nothing else we need in life, it's useful purpose and earning opportunity, particularly in the emerging markets. Jobs are so valuable and important to everybody. And these small, medium enterprises, the entrepreneurs who are driving forward those small, medium enterprises are creating jobs. And they're probably also doing really positive social environmental impact in their work as well as creating those jobs. So that's vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem excites me every time. And that's not to say big businesses aren't doing good things too, but those entrepreneurs really get the juices flowing. But what makes us wake up at night or keeps us up at night, Victor, the headwinds. Not just the conflicts you alluded to in the conversation we had recently, but wars and conflict and geopolitical strife that's happening all across the world, in many countries in Africa. Right now, we know a lot about what's happening in Israel and Gaza, in strife in many countries and places, Ukraine, Russia. There are so many issues. Those are pretty awful, horrendous, sort of heartbreaking items. But I think what's also keeping on my mind is this sense that governments and people are moving increasingly to a sort of populist right-wing way, which doesn't appear to be embracing the spirit and heart of impact, doesn't appear to be putting social impact, people's lives first, doesn't appear to be putting environmental impact, climate impact first either. So we have this tense situation which keeps us awake, where we're watching people really fighting for maybe more for themselves than for the world as a whole. And that's a big issue. We need to think about how do we address it? How do we help solve it? can impact investment as a movement, can the impact movement actually do that? Or are we a bit powerless amidst all of that? So there's a sort of nagging sense that we're not cooperating, collaborating as a human race well as we could or should be. The rich are getting richer. Those without resources, those without the power are getting weaker and impoverished from it. And that's a big issue. I think we need to look at how we all pool together better across borders, across sectors, across races, across everything.
I couldn't agree more, sir. I couldn't agree more. There's so much happening in the world right now, and we have this it's not really a proverb, it's more of a sentiment, Ubuntu, I am because we are. And that sentiment around humanity, I think, is so needed in these times. When you think about, as you mentioned, Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, what's happening in Sudan, the Congo, Somalia, the Sahel region.
Yes.
It's all over the world. But once again, we're in a time when capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, we're seeing almost the fruits of some systems that, in some instances, like capitalism has brought so many people out of poverty. Like, it's undeniable. But I think we have to start thinking, like you mentioned, from that impact first. Like thinking about what kind of social impact can every transaction make. What kind of so that's why I'm always inspired by the work of the Global Steering Group, and Big Society Capital, and all these initiatives that are saying, well, you know what, we can figure out profits, but we have to censor things that aren't just profitable. We have to censor people and planets. So once again, all that geopolitical strife, I think our prayers must remain with all those individuals that are just dealing with such calamity. And I'm just blessed to be in a space and time where my family is healthy and well, and yours.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely we have to send.
No, and I think I'm allowed to interrupt on this one. I'm just looking up on my screen here to remind myself the name of the book I'm reading, which is Frankopan's Silk Road, and it's a history book, but we've lived in an extraordinary century. We went through. I've just watched the Oppenheimer movie last night as well. We did terrible things to ourselves throughout the two world wars, and that sort of shocked humanity into this sense that we have to rebuild together. So we had 80 years of issues in many places, but comparative, relative peace and global harmony with the systems. But reading his book, taking me back sort of 500-600 years, this was an abnormal century we've just had, where we were able to get on well with each other. And actually, you go back into the 15th, 16th century, we were at war with each other all over the place the whole time, doing some terrible things, not just imperialism and other bad things, but there were some bad activities going on. And that worries me. That's more of a natural state of being for humanity. And I'm not even a rose-tinted spectacles person, but I wonder whether we've lost sight of how awful it can be, and we're allowing ourselves slip into that. So I'm not here to be negative or worry, but I wonder if we've had this sort of privileged opportunity for the last 80, 90 years where we've held ourselves together as a world, and we're now slipping back into some sort of abyss on it.
Yeah, well, I think definitely we're slipping back, because of the needs. It seems like we know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. And as a species, our wants and our demands and our lusts are becoming just more and more. So when you think about the mineral extraction on the planets, when you think about the consumption, when you think about, so it's almost, we're at a point where humanity is insatiable. Like what does contentment look like to the average human being? And one of the challenges I feel that we face sometimes is even like when we look at the wealth gap, or like wealth disparity, or just the gap between the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots in many instances are thriving to have just like the haves. So it creates a dynamic where there isn't a countervailing balance or force, where everyone is striving to have a disproportionate amount of what they actually need. and that's what's ultimately scares me.
So I mean, if I can go back to my book list, another book I've been reading recently and enjoyed is Less is More by Jason Hickel. And it's he's not preaching to us, but he's just explaining the basic facts that we have to collectively accept a bit less. Now, that's really easy to say from a sort of Western European, United Kingdom perspective. It's very different if you are just a wage earner for 20 relatives in India or South Africa or somewhere, pushing yourself to earn every extra marginal cent. And degrowth and being told to have less and accept less is a very difficult message. But I think we've got to look at it, particularly those of us in those places where we can consume less as a major piece, because we can't have everybody, all 8 billion of us, continuing to seek more and have more. And these are big issues, and these are big sort of personal choices and then political choices for people. But it's certainly that theme of degrowth, of consumption, I think is really important. You can be a techno-optimist, and there's some amazing progress in technology which will help us amongst many of these issues, particularly around electricity and consumption of fossil fuels, etc. But even the most techno-optimistic person has to understand that we have to also simply consume less.
Absolutely, because those same technologies need lithium and cobalt.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you. So my next question: what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and what are some of the approaches you and your team are taking to overcome some of these challenges?
Thanks, Victor. So maybe let me just speak briefly about what my work is. So GSG, of which you're a member and a follower, the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, we work really hard to help private capital move towards public good. We work as a shaper of the impact movement with a particular focus on impact investments. We are passionate to see what can we do, what tools, innovations, what advocacy can we do globally, country by country, to have more capital deployed for public good, more impact investment. And the way we have that success over the last decade or so is by having extraordinary leaders in a number of different countries, each of whom run the National Advisory Board, the national partner for GSG in that country. And those individuals have set up organizations which are driving the impact revolution in their own country. And this ranges from Zambia to Argentina, through the US and Germany to Australia, Japan, South Korea, most recently Thailand and Kenya and other countries in this family. And this model of driving impact in your economy, driving towards every decision being made with impact at its heart, every business, consumption, every investment decision, every government decision, thinking about the impact and outcomes, will take us on a journey towards what we call impact economies, where we're running our society, we're running our economies with impact in mind, with social environmental impact in mind. And that's a big shift for a lot of economies and structures. So we do this through a combination of innovation, thinking of trialing new ideas, new tools, for example, results-based finance, which is a fast-growing, successful tool to enable better delivery of services and outcomes at a lower price through better incentivization alignment. So we innovate tools like that. We advocate. We work really hard with one of the key audiences of ours is policymakers, regulators, government. We work hard to bring impact transparency to their attention, to help them think about how they can incorporate impact in their incentive structures as they regulate and structure the ecosystem, the economy. And we orchestrate. There are a lot of people doing great things, and at the very least, we try and bring those people together. We help provide guidance. We work bottom up. We bring the voices of over 50 countries into a submission to the G20 or a submission to the International Standards Board. So we orchestrate the impact movement through providing leadership, recognizing that we're an organic bottom-up organization, and that those moments of leadership come from all kinds of different places, inspirations, locations, they come from everywhere. So we innovate, we advocate, we orchestrate the impact movement. And it's something which we're just a tiny little fly on the surface of the world at GSG. But with this extraordinary network across 50 countries, we try really hard to advance impact into everyone's lives through this movement.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And the work that the GSG has done is tremendous in the sense that it's brought together so many diverse thought leaders and practitioners, all centering justice, access, inclusion, diversity, decolonization, equity in such remarkable ways. So once again, my hats off to your entire team and all the work you've done in terms of building this impact revolution, this impact movement. So my next question is, how do you feel about the future of impact investing internationally and new fund managers? Are you optimistic? Are you hopeful? How do you feel?
So I'm hopeful. And I think we don't need to think about what is impact investing and what's its role, and then how can we help influence and change the behavior of all investing. So impact investing is often measured and defined slightly differently, but it is growing at, let's say, 30% per annum. And it's been growing fast, which is exciting and very positive for us. But it's still considered a sort of $2 trillion asset class out of a total finance industry of over $200 trillion. So it's like 1% of the total. One of the things we think about is, what can we bring from impact? How can we put impact at the heart of all sort of investment and money? So if you think here about this range of sustainable impact investment, you've got traditional investing where no one's even thinking about the ESG or impact. Then you've got responsible, sustainable, through to impact investing. So impact investing is only like $2 trillion, but the total pool of this is $200 trillion plus. So how do we get more of these people who are beginning to think responsibly, who are applying ESG lens? How do we get them to think sustainably and with impact at heart? And look at this, just sheer size of that pool of money that is there on the left-hand side of that chart. If we can get them to think about impact in even a smallest measure, then that's a terrific achievement. So we'll spend a lot of time focusing on this 2.3 trillion or a bit more of impact investment, which is doing such an incredible impact first, impact directly through its investment. But we're also very interested in this other group who are currently just maybe avoiding harm, mitigating their own financial risk, but maybe they could also be benefiting stakeholders more and then driving solutions at scale. So there are many sort of ways we can think about how we could really sort of shape the rest of the finance industry. And to me, that's a big opportunity for the impact investment movement. We've demonstrated these great tools. We've demonstrated how it works. We've shown you can optimize for risk, return, and impact and do well at all these areas together. You can build small, medium, large businesses which drive great social and environmental outcomes, as well as making a fair risk-adjusted return. And we're hoping we can inspire and educate others who are beginning down that journey to see the way that they can also deliver great impact alongside those financial returns.
Thank you so much for your leadership, all those actual insights, and doing a deep dive, almost a brief masterclass on the asset classes that are available and the amounts of wealth. When you think about it, a lot of times there is this scarcity mentality in all ecosystems and sectors, but the amounts of wealth and abundance that we have access to make an impact on the planet is astronomical. So once again, I just appreciate your consistent leadership as always. My second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, our ultimate goal is that every decision made and every allocation of resource made has impact at its heart. And when I say impact, that's shorthand really for delivering the SDGs. We haven't talked about the SDGs on this call because it's almost like a given assumption, but they are a really terrific measure of livelihood, equity, climate, well-being, sustainability. Those SDGs, all 169 of them, summarized in different ways by different people, that's what we'd like to see achieved. That's our goal, but we see the way to achieving that goal as being getting consumers, governments, investors, businesses thinking about those outcomes, thinking about the SDGs and every act they take. Whether you're buying a cup of coffee on the street and you know that the coffee shop on the left sources its beans and pays a fair price from farmers, or the coffee shop on the right is a bit cheaper for its coffee, but it doesn't pay a fair price to the farmers and uses expensive, dirty oil to transport the coffee across. If we know that level of detail, then we can make informed choices. So we believe in a world where decisions can be made by everybody based on the impact of those allocations.
Incredible. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your consistent leadership and solidarity as always. My final question, Alistair. Do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Thank you, Victor. It's been an absolute pleasure. My call to action would be think hard about the impact of everything you do. I used the example of the coffee cups earlier. The technology is there, the data's there. Look into the people you buy your products from. Think about what type of fuel you put into your car in the morning. Think about how many miles you want to drive it. Think about your own consumption, because this can only work if it's bottom up. But just be aware, think twice about everything you do, and think about the sort of what that means for impact and the outcomes from your actions. And then bring that to your office and your work as well. Bring it to your work where you can. And together, we'll solve these problems.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. I can't agree more. The solution is a mindset, and it has to be a bottom-up solution. If everyone does their parts and actually manifest the change they want to see in the world through their daily actions and behavioral patterns, the world will be a much better place in a much shorter time frame. So once again, I appreciate your leadership, your consistent solidarity. You know, you're always there when I call, my friend. And most importantly, I appreciate your authenticity and candor. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And as always, at Setsi, we close the way we began, by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks and acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Alistair, for all that you do for so many.
Thank you, Victor, for all that you do. And I echo those words. You're a true leader. You show consistent leadership everywhere I see you. We meet, we talk. I look forward to our next conversation, seeing you in person sometime soon. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.